So, when I was a child, I was a really huge fan of this movie, The Wizard of Oz. You've probably heard of it with Judy Garland. And I must have watched it I watched it every year. And since then, I've probably watched it like at least 30 times. And it's always been really front and center in my mind. And I remember doing my own healing journey, like early on, my guides sort of reminding me of a pivotal moment in that movie that really hit home. I was like, wow, that's big. I've seen this like so many times, and the message really had never hit home. And that's around, at the end of the movie, Dorothy learns, that if she's been wearing these shoes, right, since her house landed in Oz, and they popped off of the witch's feet under her. So she's been wearing these ruby slippers right through the whole movie, or almost all of the movie, through all of her adventure trying to get home. Right, because the whole adventure, if you haven't seen the movie teaser, I'm going to tell you anyway, but I assume most people have seen it at least once. So she's wearing these ruby slippers the whole time, and the witch, the bad witch, really wants to get them, and the good witch really, it's like you got to keep those on. But what she doesn't know until the end of the movie, right, is that those ruby slippers are her ticket home. And that all she has to do is just, tap them together and say, I want to go home, take me home, and she will be there. And so when she gets this information, right, after traveling all through Oz and, melting a wicked witch and having all sorts of adventures, she says to Glinda the Good Witch, her helper on this journey, why didn't you tell me this before? And her answer is, you wouldn't have believed me. Like Dorothy wouldn't have believed me, right? She had to learn it for herself. And I was thinking about that today. Then that was a big moment for me when I understood, like, that's what life is for, right? We learn from experience, and that experience is where we find our power, where we find our truth, where we find our knowing. And you can't teach somebody just with words alone, right? You can't tell somebody the answer before they've had the experience to discover the answer themselves. So that's what today's episode is all about. It's about the importance in the human realm on learning through experience. Hello and welcome to Intuitive Connection. I'm your host, intuitive counselor, and spiritual guide, Victoria Shaw. And today I want to talk about this idea that words don't teach, right? And that oftentimes, or all the time, what your soul is here to do in the human realm is to learn by doing, by experiencing. And this can sometimes be frustrating to us humans, right? Because we want the answer in advance. But sometimes you can't understand or grasp the answer until you've lived it, right? And sometimes, too, you'll hear a spiritual teaching. This happens to me all the time. And then there's like this moment. My friend Lisa McCourt calls it the kerplunk. That's her sweet little verbiage. But there's that moment, right, where everything lines up and you're like, oh, now I get it. Now I get it because I've experienced it, because I'm living it right now. Okay. It's a felt sense. And I had a client this morning, and they were very concerned about their son's relationship. And they were very concerned that their son's relationship with his girlfriend that he's been with for many years is what they were calling a toxic relationship, right? They said it's just no good. She's yells at him, and she's very manipulative, and he's upset all the time, and he doesn't feel good about himself. And we keep telling him, like, break it off, break it off. This is not good for you. And he won't listen. He won't listen. And it's driving his father and I nuts, right? Because we know, we've been through this. We see where he's going, right? And my answer to her, or the guide's answer to her, was maybe not what she would have expected. The guide's answer to her was, well, he knows how you feel, right? And they're like, yeah, we've mentioned it, right? And then the guide said, okay, so he knows what you think, right? And he's not getting the message. So he's going to have to learn this, right? However, he learns this through his experience. And she's like, yeah, but I don't want to see him go through that. It's so painful to watch, right? And the guide said, look, what you don't want to do ever is stand between another human being, even one that you love, and their experience and what they're going through and what they're doing, because that experience is their learning. That experience is how we grow. It's how we live. It's how we learn, right? We invite it into our space, right? Because we are curious about it. That's the only reason why you have any experience in your life. On some level, you asked for it. On some level, you asked for it. Maybe it was a curiosity or a desire, that pulled in part of what you wanted or all of what you wanted. Or sometimes it feels like it's not what you wanted. But I promise you, if it's in your space, at least part of it was desired, right? Or invited. Sometimes it's just what we believe is going to be. And so we invite it in just because we believe it so hard, it can't not happen. But either way, all of these things we learn from and we grow from and we expand from, and we get to, have more curiosity. And, we can say like, oh, I really love the passion that woman brought to the relationship. But after a while, man, her energy drained me. And I don't think I want to do that again. Right. But no one can tell you that you're going to reach that moment in advance. You kind of have to wait for it to happen. And when we try to stand between someone and their experience, including ourselves, because sometimes we do that, we want the answer so hard that we try to prevent ourselves from having the experience. But let's start by talking about another human being, right? When we try to stand between another human being and their experience, all we do is get in the way. All we do is get in the way. Sometimes we get involved. Sometimes we become part of their experience, right? Sometimes they're reacting to us. Sometimes they're annoyed with us. Sometimes they listen to us and they follow us, and then they invite that thing or a variation of that thing again because they still want to learn it. Other times they ignore us, right? Or get angry at us. But it's never our job to stand between someone else and their experience. You can make a suggestion, right? Especially if someone asks your opinion, right? But we never want to get in someone's way of the life that they are choosing to live. Right. And in this case, her son was choosing to live that path. Now, you can tend to what you're feeling inside. If this is a family member that you're watching and their behavior is making you uncomfortable because you feel for them or you care for them, then you can take that time to tend to how you feel in yourself, my sweet friends. And oftentimes, what's really going on is we are experiencing our own memories, right? We are almost projecting on I remember the boyfriend that I had in high school, and oh my God, he was so difficult. And it took me so long to learn to walk away from that relationship. And now I see my son doing the same thing. I need to stop him. What you need to do is comfort your sweetheart. Remind yourself how much you learned from that. Remind yourself that it's over, that you're safe, that, all is well, and that your son will get through this too, right? That's what you got to do. So we're dealing with other people, and I have this with clients too, right? We really want to remember not to get in the way of what people need to experience, because by living your life, you are able to learn what your soul came here to learn. And again, it's not a lesson like, I hoped you learned your lesson, young lady, right? Glinda didn't say that to Dorothy. She said, wow, now that you've been through this adventure, right? You're really going to believe that you have this power within you to bring yourself home. And that's just such a beautiful metaphor for life. We have to find it within ourselves. I believe what she said, and this is one that got me. You've always had the power to go back to Kansas. You just had to learn it for yourself. And that's what it's all about. Now, sometimes someone will go to a psychic or an intuitive, right? And wanting the answer. They want to know what they should do, or they want to know, should I go this way or that way? Because I don't want anything bad to happen to me. So fear is telling me to ask you before taking the leap. I was that person for many, many years. And sometimes I still want to be that person, right? Because life can be scary and hard when we're going like this. We want the answers in advance. And the good news is sometimes we get them. We get those glimmers. We get those little hints when we're really tapped into our intuition, when we're really listening, when we're really aligned. Oftentimes we will get that nudge to go right, when right is the easiest way to go. And I realized I just pointed left, but that's my dyslexia kicking in. But you know what I mean. And those of you listening, just ignore that. Anyway, right hand pointing left. But whatever way you go, sometimes we do get those nudges from our intuition that can be really, really helpful. But we don't want to tune in and ask that question from fear. We want to ask that question from alignment, like, ooh, this is where I think I want to go. Help me to know what would be the funnest way to go there. What would be the most fruitful route? And look, friends, I've had my intuition at times guide me in places that, were not the most enjoyable, but they were the most direct route between where I am now and where I wanted to go. And, that hiking up to my waist through the swamp maybe was a little bit meh, but it got the job done and I learned a lot from it. So sometimes our intuition will guide us that way too. But a lot of the times when we're listening, we can avoid the snakes and, the pits and the thunderstorms or whatever else is on the path. It can be easier for us if we believe that it can be easier for us and we listen. Okay. And that's true. And people call me all the time because they want to navigate this journey with more ease. They want to talk to their guides or just have that reassurance or that validation, another set of ears to go, I think this is what my guides are saying, can you tune in and see what you get too? Right. And so we want to tune in because we want to have that information and that guidance to help make things easier and help us stay in the flow. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is what your intuition's designed to do. But it's not so you can bypass your experience. It's so that you can kind of co-create your experience with your higher self or soul. Right. And when you're ready to do that more and more consciously, more intentionally, oh my goodness, that is an amazing thing. And that's what I often refer to as living in alignment. Right. When you're really just in that place where your human self and your higher self are going like this. Right. Eckhart Tolle talks about the horizontal self, our 3D self, and our vertical self, our spiritual self. So that's why I'm showing you that cross, right, where they intersect. But sometimes too, we're just not there. Sometimes in order to get there, we have to do some life living and we have to remember, we have to learn from what we don't want, what we do. Also, sometimes, especially for your parents to know, we don't always know, first of all, what our child is here to learn, but we also don't always have their perspective, right? So that big, exciting relationship that your son is going like, I can't believe, like your son is constantly like annoyed with his girlfriend and you see all the downside, they might be having a great time when they go out. Right. He may think she's the most beautiful girl on the planet. All his friends might be so jealous that he's dating her. Right. They might actually have a lot of fun together when they're not, in your viewpoint, when you're not just looking at the down stuff. Right. You really don't know because you really don't know what life looks like from another person's perspective. And you also don't ever really know what their soul is here to experience or, to learn or how they want to grow or what their soul's intention is. So if you step in there too soon and try to fix things for them, and believe me, nothing's ever broken. Everything that's happening in the now is just as it should be, even if it doesn't feel satisfying to you. It is still, it can't not be how it is, how it's supposed to be, right? Whatever is happening in the now is just right. And if you are not enjoying what's happening in the now, by all means, you can ask for some guidance towards the direction that will be more enjoyable. Nothing wrong with that, right? But there's also nothing wrong with whatever is. There just isn't. Right. So there's nothing to fix at all. And sometimes what we do try to do is when we see somebody doing something, someone that we love, someone that we care about, even sometimes ourselves, that we feel is like, oh, I don't think that's the right choice. We try to swoop in and fix the problem to protect them or to protect parts of ourselves. And we don't always know when we're dealing with another person what their soul is here to do. And quite honestly, the guides say, even when we're dealing with ourselves, like, you know what I mean? When you're looking at yourself and you're oftentimes, this is retrospective, right? Where we come back and we say like, I can't believe you did that, person. Right. We have to have grace with ourselves and understand that life is, it's something that we manage without an instruction manual, we're learning it as we go along. And that's the fun of it. That's exactly as it's supposed to be. So it's important that we give ourselves grace for that. Right. And know that everything's just right. Right. If you go left, because your dyslexia is kicking in and you can't tell left from right. And, you fall off the cliff and you bang your knees. Right. Well, that's okay. You'll get back up. You'll see where you want to go next. And that's fine. That's fine. That's part of your human journey. It didn't mean you went did something wrong. It just meant you chose a different path. And with our loved ones as well, right? We don't always know what their best path is to learning and discovering what they want to know, and telling them in advance, or feeling like if we just give them this information that they can bypass all of this. It's not so. It's not so. They have to learn it for themselves. I often joke that I have lived, I don't know, what am I up to, 32 lives in this body, because I have been on such a growth path. And because people that probably knew me and I was like 10, well, maybe 10, I was probably still pretty cool, but 15, 16, 20, 30, whatever, like wouldn't even recognize me now. Okay. Because I've made so much growth, and the way that I understand the world is so very different. Now I love every part of myself. I was cool at 20. I was cool at 15. I was cool at 35. And, I was just doing my thing. I was just doing what I was here to do. And it's a natural human tendency to look back, and kids do this all the time. I've seen it, look back at a younger version of yourself and go, oh my God, what was she doing? That's so embarrassing. Right. But don't, because what she was doing or what he was doing was just right for that moment now, when that is what he or she knew. Right. Because, wait for it, I bet you can guess what I'm going to say next. We learn through experience. We learn through experience. Our perspective changes, it expands, it grows. And that is how it should be. Right? So at the end of the day, when I do a podcast like this, any podcast that I do, but especially the one today, one of the things that I recognize again and again and again in all the work that I do, and I am a professional speaker for my living, right? I channel in my sessions, in my teachings, in my podcast, in my readings, in my writings, right? A lot of what I do, not all of what I do, but a good chunk of what I do is receiving guidance in the form of words and passing that along. And yet, even I know the truth isn't in those words themselves, right? The words are just pointers. They're just little hints to help us tap back in and awaken that deeper knowing and that deeper truth. And while I love my words just as much as the next guy, and sometimes I even put great stake in them, I understand on a deep and visceral level, the words themselves don't teach. They can guide us, they can suggest to us. But in that moment, when you have the aha, the kerplunk, the, oh, now I get it, those moments always come from lived experience. So the best thing you can do, friends, is listen to the words. I always say, listen with a soft mind, let them in. Don't think about it too hard. Just let whatever gets your attention, get your attention. Take that in, feel it in, and then know that as you continue forward on your life, and in your life, you're going to get your answers. You're going to get your answers. You're going to get your growth, your expansion, your awakening, whatever it is that you're looking for, you're getting it anyway, even if you're not even trying. Isn't that cool? Know that you always have the power within you. You always had it. You'll always have it. And it's just a matter of learning it for yourself. All right. That's all I got for you today. Thank you all for tuning in. I can't wait to hear what you think about this one. If you love this podcast, please, please, please share with your friends, like, subscribe, do all the stuff. It really helps get the word out there. And most importantly, keep listening, because I love what I do. And it's a gift and an honor to share with all of you. So enjoy the rest of your day, and namaste.